The Quintez Cephus story is one with many twists and turns. It seems in this man's life, he's had to persevere and overcome many, many obstacles in order to become the 166th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. So much so that in 2018, it nearly almost was all taken from him forever. I especially like the Quintez story because it is one of preservation, determination, and success. Many people knew about the trial around Quintez Cephus his junior year, but not a lot of people know that his father also died while he was at the University of Wisconsin. So he was definitely playing with a heavy heart and going through a whole lot, and was still able to persevere and become a Detroit Lion. Let's get into the story. Quintez Cephus, born on April Fool's Night. Cephus grew up in Macon, Georgia, and was a basketball player growing up in high school until his coaches convinced him to play football. Cephus didn't so quickly take to the sport, but after a sophomore season where he only played in one game, his junior year he came back and really turned things around, taking on to the sport and really establishing himself as one of the better athletes in the state. He had 250 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 83 carries for 420 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's 681 yards of total offense for a first-year football player. The coaches really adapted to his style, got on him and got him to work, and came up with a game plan for him the next season. As a senior wide receiver, Quintez Cephus had 40 catches for 844 yards with 16 touchdowns for 1,020 all-purpose yards. I mean, the dude turned around and lit it up. Cephus committed to the University of Wisconsin on November 13th, 2015. He turned down offers from Georgia Tech, Miami, Vanderbilt, among others. Cephus committed to Furman for basketball, but decided to pursue football as a business decision. As a freshman at Wisconsin, Quintez saw the field a little bit but had a minimal role and a minimal impact. He played 6 games, grabbing 4 catches for 94 yards and 0 touchdowns. But he really put it together as a sophomore though. He saw the field in all 10 games and had 30 catches for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns before breaking his leg against Indiana in November of 2017. After coming off a huge month of October, snagging 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown against Purdue on October 14th, and taking 4 catches for 68 yards and another score at Nebraska on October 7th, Quintez was really missed by his teammates. As Quintez started to rehab his injury and prepare for a comeback junior season, I wonder if he had any idea that 5 months later, the game he grew to love will be snatched from him again. But this time, it wasn't happening on the field.
Waiting for the Dane County District Attorney to comment on possible charges against a UW football player this morning.
Quintez Cephus was the Badgers' leading receiver last night, but he's not going to be playing for now because of those possible charges. But that is not because of a school policy. Leah Lynchide's here this morning to explain why. Good morning.
Good morning. Quintez Cephus is a junior. He was expected to make a big comeback this year after an injury last November. Instead, Cephus says he's taking a leave of absence to focus on clearing his name over allegations stemming from an incident in April from a relationship he claims was consensual. The police department confirms there is an open investigation. Officers are waiting on a decision by the Dane County DA. The DA, meanwhile, has not talked. We're hoping to hear more from him today. Now, as for whether Cephus will face discipline from the university.
Football player Quintez Cephus enters a plea in Dane County Court.
Cephus faces 2 felony sexual assault charges. Eric Franke has more in the newsroom. Eric?
Susan, Mark, this all stems, of course, from that incident that allegedly happened back in April when two women came forward to say they were at Cephus' apartment on April 22nd and that he sexually assaulted them while they were drunk. Cephus says it was consensual and pleaded not guilty today to those charges. The 20-year-old wide receiver has been suspended from the team since those charges were filed. A separate attorney has also filed a lawsuit on Cephus' behalf against the university in federal court for how it handled a Title IX investigation into the claims, saying it violated his constitutional rights.
In the early morning hours of April 22nd, 2018, it is said that Cephus engaged in sexual acts with two white women who had flirted with him at the bar the night before. Afterwards, the women claimed they were too drunk to give consent legally, being only 18 years old at the time, and that Cephus had sexually assaulted them. Later that day, Dane County Sheriff's Office searched Cephus' apartment, and in August, Cephus was suspended from the Badgers football team. Also in August, Cephus was formally charged with second and third degree counts of sexual assaults on an intoxicated victim. On October 9th, Cephus sued the University of Wisconsin in federal court, claiming he was deprived of due process. Afterwards, Cephus was expelled from the school entirely. It was seeming like the end of the line for Quintez to most people. But Quintez maintained his innocence. His defense said they had enough evidence to prove the female who filed the report wasn't too drunk to consent, but also said that they can prove that the entire menage a trois was her idea. Cephus took the stand during the trial and told the judge directly that earlier that night, the accuser had introduced him to her friend, and for the next 20 to 30 minutes, she was attached to him, but he didn't see them drink too much at all. But what Cephus later admitted would shock the entire courtroom and possibly save his trial. Cephus would admit that he had his teammate and roommate, Danny Davis, take a video of him in the act with the two girls, but lied to officers earlier in order to try to protect his teammate from any charges. So it turns out that the entire sexual escapade was consensual, but the girls got wind of Cephus having his roommates secretly record or film them in the act as to, I don't know if it was to expose them or just to keep it for themselves, but they didn't like it too much. And instead of, just telling them to delete it, or maybe they wouldn't delete it, to get revenge on them for pulling that, which was kind of, corny, but, kids, I don't know. Anyway, but instead of getting them to delete it, they decided to get revenge by going to the cops. Or at least that's what the jury believed, because they only went to the back to deliberate for 45 minutes before they had the unanimous not guilty trial.
Football player is allowed back at school after being found not guilty of sexual assault. After fighting a year-long case, Quintez Cephus is now ready for a new chapter. Adriana Mendez has that story from Madison.
Cephus says he was out of town and on his way back to Wisconsin when he heard the news about his reinstatement. His attorneys say they're pleased with today's decision. Back in Wisconsin and ready to start a new year, Quintez Cephus cleared of 2 sexual assault violations and now allowed back at the University of Wisconsin.
I'm ready to win football games and start back getting my education, and I expect to do it at a very high level.
After being acquitted, Cephus dropped his lawsuit against the University of Wisconsin and in turn was readmitted to the university. He finally was able to be a Badger again and couldn't wait to reconnect with his teammates. Now, with the stench of accusations and trial behind him, Cephus was prepared for a comeback mission. He was seeking redemption. As a junior, Cephus played in all 14 games, nabbing 59 receptions for 901 yards and 7 touchdowns, with an impressive, better yet, insane 15.3 yards per catch, setting career highs and leading the team in each category, leading his Badgers to a trip to the Rose Bowl where he would snag his final touchdown grab at Wisconsin, setting himself up for a future in the NFL. Pasadena. We go to Pasadena. Go. At the next level, Cephus projects as a third or fourth wide receiver. He's not going to be the vertical down the field burner that Marvin Jones is, but he should find a home in the slot as a possession wide receiver and a red zone threat. Cephus has excellent footwork in and out of his breaks, and I'm really impressed with how strong his hands are. While he doesn't create elite separation, and it's not to be expected from him running down the field, he does an excellent job of gaining separation at the top of his routes, and he may be able to muscle a lot of corners. I think he's a nice scheme fit for Stafford, and he was requested by offensive coordinator Darrell Bevell. I like where the kid's head at, and I just hope that after overcoming everything he does, he is humbled and ready to be something great, and he's not feeling like he's invincible. But I do like the fit on the football field, and I like that he's working with Stafford early. So I give the grade a B. Good job, guys.